Hi, I'm Lindsey, and I'm talking with MedTech industry leaders on how they change lives for a better world.
The inventions and technologies are fascinating, and so are the people who work with them.
There was a period of time where I realized fundamentally my job was to go hang out with really smart people that are saving lives and then do work that would help them save more lives.
I got into the business to save lives, and it is incredibly motivating to work with people who are in that same business, saving or improving lives.
What better industry than where I get to wake up every day and just save people's lives?
These are extraordinary people doing extraordinary work, and this is The Leading Difference.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Leading Difference podcast. I'm your host, Lindsey, and today I'm delighted to welcome Rachel Knutton. Rachel is founder and CEO of Alluvia Studio, a strategic MedTech marketing agency based in Tennessee that supports some of the largest MedTech brands in the world. Her experience in healthcare spans 30 years, including hospital marketing and PR for HCA Healthcare, as well as various roles in medical device commercialization, sales, and marketing. Right. Well, welcome to the show, Rachel. It's so nice to
Thank
have
you
you
for having
here.
me.
Of course. I would love if you would start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what led you to MedTech.
Yes, so I actually have a pretty interesting background, and I bet I'll cover a little bit more of it as we go through the discussion. But currently, I have a MedTech marketing agency. We have 16 employees, been in business technically since 2011, so 14 years. I'm just really focused on this industry. I path to getting into MedTech actually came through HCA Healthcare. I started working in hospital world back in 1996, and actually it was accidental. I, was pretty new out of school, a couple years out of school, and I'd answered an ad and I dove right into a really exciting world. It's, of course, headquartered here in Nashville, learned all about hospitals. I supported I think 8 different hospitals at that time that were in the region, the Nashville region, doing marketing and public relations, walked into my first open heart surgery case, helped feed employees at midnight, handled all kinds of interesting PR events because we're here in Nashville and country music stars might get hospitalized. And I did that for about 10 years. And then I ended up moving into devices as a recruiter. And it's when Kimberly Clark Healthcare had gone into the medical devices arena through the purchase of Ballard. And so honestly, I really didn't know much about it. I had, I did have my MBA. I had been working in healthcare, which sort of met the qualifications at the time. And I got an early start in Marcom. I learned so much, got back into the hospital through that role from the other side of the coin. And I had the chance to do product management, launch a product, and then I moved into sales and sold the product, a whole bag. And then got back into the hospital, working through the whole value ecosystem and working with physicians and being in cases. So it's been a very interesting path for.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And so I'm curious about a lot of things, but I'll start with this. So, what do you find are some of the differences and similarities between marketing and PR for the hospital side of things versus the device side of things?
Mm. I mean, certainly, I think the PR piece is a much bigger aspect, the community aspect. Every hospital is such an important part of the community. So there's a heavy weight there on that. And then, of course, the regional aspect of it. So whereas in the device world, we're all targeting like very large geographies, maybe either the US or outside of the US. And so in the hospital world, that tends to be more regionalized. I would say that's like one of the big differences for sure. And then honestly, in the hospital world, it's more business to consumer. There is a lot of physician related marketing as you're trying to drive preference to, using your hospital for surgeries or trying to recruit physicians, but it's a lot more B2C than the med tech world.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So you mentioned that, you responded to an ad and that led you to, it was sort of like, well, I say,
Sure, yeah.
energy, whatever you want to say, but that was was marketing and communications something that you always had a passion for, or what led you to kind of pursue that?
Yes. Well, actually, I was a little bit more of a writer. I would say telling stories is origin story. So I wanted to work in magazines. This is back when we still did print and newspapers and things like that. And I always wanted to work in the magazine industry. And and it started out writing for a business magazine, started working for an agency for Ford, doing writing for a sales focused magazine. And so it just sort of morphed into that, I would say, in the marketing and PR world. We were telling stories about patient stories, pitching those to newspapers. We were telling stories about physicians doing new types of procedures, employees, trying to promote them within the hospital world. That's all so important to that ecosystem. And so I think that's kind of where that transition happened. And I would say that's still what I do today. So it's taken a lot of different forms, product management, working in Excel files and figuring out demand forecasts isn't really about telling stories, but it is, right? Everything is about telling a story in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like you have the strategist side, the analytical side, and the creative side, which
Yes.
doesn't always, align. And
Yes.
so tell us a little bit about your approach, maybe to say there's a client of yours that is interested in bringing a product to market and storytell to help them achieve their goals and
Mhm.
within compliance, because obviously that's a component.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's certainly in our industry of, figuring out what are the guardrails. Of course, in marketing, I always think, we know the rules, but we're also going to make sure that we're not self-limiting within those rules. So I let the regulatory people and the legal people push back, but I know what not to risk, right? So I think one of the things that's very helpful is having sold devices, having launched devices myself, having worked in the hospital system. Spent a lot of time on the floors watching how devices are used. I spent time in ICU collecting data. I think really having been part of that environment helps feed the story building process. It's almost like a natural part of what goes into building that story. So, because of that experience, because I've walked those halls, I've been in those shoes, I kind of know what some of those limitations are. And that just automatically configures into the storytelling process. I know what the product managers are up against when they're trying to launch a product. And theoretically, I should know the right questions to ask and how they got to the product that they have today and how customer feedback has fed into that. And then how do we take that and make sure that the messaging meets the same requirements? Like you have design requirements. Well, your messaging should have the same requirements and achieve a goal. So I think that's the analytical side, is making sure, does the message achieve the goal? Are we being very committed to what's the business objective? How is the marketing objective supporting that? And then how is the messaging fitting into that? I think that's a very important part of the discipline. We also are very familiar with, claims matrices and the importance of having, data and research to support claims. And so kind of knowing that framework, I think, is helpful when you're building messaging, because it helps you think through, like, okay, here's how the client is going to need to organize the messaging. Here's how they're going to have to reuse the messaging. How can we be very consistent in how we roll that out so they're not having to go back through the approval process every time. It's a really important part of the discipline in the MedTech world that we have to deal with, that other industries as well, of course, but it's certainly very important in ours.
Yeah. 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 I really appreciate that insight. And I think, it's so interesting to see, and you're totally speaking my language about the consistency of it's something I preach so much, is you have to be consistent with your messaging and your branding. And it's not like everyone has to have the same cookie cutter language, but when you're aligned, that really translates out.
And it works. So this is, yeah, I think this is a little bit of it's not a pet peeve, it's a passion project rather of mine, is to get people to be consistent, because I think what happens is internally, people get tired very quickly of their messaging or their creative. And I do think you need creative variability. We know with AI, you need some of that, like that's going to be important, but probably your customer, your target audience isn't tired of it. And they've might not have even seen it yet. And it's that very old, like 9 times someone has to hear a message. And so my favorite clients are the ones that work very hard to get the messaging right in the first place. They go through the disciplined process of doing it, knowing why we're doing it, getting full buy-in from an extended team, and then just keep with it. With some obviously refinement and tweaking when you get customer feedback. But, you know, sadly, I'm sure we've all had this instance where it's like, oh, doctor didn't like this ad. We need a new ad campaign. And it's like, well, that's okay. I'm really glad he noticed it. That's all right. That might be okay. So I think that the best companies are consistent. And, one of our clients is Intuitive Surgical. And one of the things that we see is like, of course, there's fresh creative. Of course, there's brand evolution, but the overall message is very consistent. And it's fun to see how fruitful that consistency has been for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. So you worked for other companies and then you took a leap and became an entrepreneur and a
Yes.
leader of your business. What was
Yes.
that like? Were you prepared, so to speak? I'm not sure anyone's actually prepared to be an entrepreneur, but how did
Yeah.
that go for you?
Yeah. I was certainly an accidental entrepreneur. Lifestyle choices, particularly marrying someone in the military at the time when we didn't do Zoom calls, forced me to look at my career path and go, you know what? I'm not going to climb the corporate career ladder moving. At that time, it wasn't a thing. And I thought, I'm going to need to do consulting in order to, support my family and then keep my business going. So I had lifestyle reasons that I became an entrepreneur, and I wasn't really sure how it was going to work out, to be perfectly honest with you. And, I felt like a lot of people say, well, I'm consulting, which just means they don't have a job right now. And I don't know, nothing bad about saying that. That can be very true. But for me, I was like, this is actually something I'm going to need to do. And I did it as a solo consultant for several years. And then when we finally settled down and stopped moving, I said, well, it's time for me to get some help. The thing that was really interesting to me is I never really wanted to manage people. Even when I was in the corporate world, I just wanted to do great work. I wanted to, I felt like people slowed me down. I'm like, just let me go. I'm a star player. And it was really nothing that I was interested in at all. And now I have, all these employees and I spend a very large portion of my time managing people. And the thing that has been so surprising is how gratifying that is, how fulfilling it is. One to, go beyond your comfort zone and I've learned so much. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've thought about other leaders that I've been lucky to work with in the past and follow what they do. And maybe some people who had some tendencies that I try not to do, or I'll check myself and go, oh, am I doing that? But I think managing team, developing people is the most exciting piece of it. I always loved helping clients. So as I started out in this venture, I had a couple of offers to go work full time for those clients. But at that point, I had been helping a few people and I was like, well, I can't say no to the guy at this company. I can't say no to her because she needs my help. And if I have a full-time job, I'm not going to be able to do that. So I really just wanted to help as many people as possible. And I felt like owning my own business will allow me to do that. Now that I have a team, we're able to help so many more people. And that is really gratifying. The other thing is where I am, my community is outside of Nashville and we're a micropolitan, which means we're kind of just far away for a commute to Nashville to be impractical. We have a local university here. And so one of the things I wanted to do early on was work with the local university talent for people who want to stay in this upper Cumberland area and have a great profession. And it's somewhat limited still. It is growing, but there's not a lot of big corporate jobs. So what I love to do is I bring that corporate experience into my small business in terms of professional development, evaluations, how we coach people. And then I try to get rid of all the stuff that I didn't really care about working in the corporate land, and increase flexibility and let's not have politics and things like that. And so that people can just grow and flourish. And so I'm very passionate about it. I love helping clients and I love helping my team. And so it's really like the best of both worlds for me.
Yeah, excellent. So you have an interesting name for your company, and I would love if
Yes.
you would share a little bit of what led to that.
Yeah. Thank you for asking about that, actually. So when I was, first name for my company was called Good Day Marketing. And when I realized I was really going to stay in MedTech at that time, when I launched it, I was like, well, maybe I won't do MedTech. Maybe I'll just do other marketing. I was like, well, MedTech is where the people want me. This is what I know. I have expertise. This is where I need to be. It made a lot of sense. I was like, okay, I need to rebrand. And I had gone through a period of testing. And so I'm a Christian and I'm familiar with scripture, where you're like, you get refined in the fire, you're refined like silver and like gold. And I was like, okay, I need to have something about gold. And I discovered there's a type of gold called alluvial gold. And it's the kind of gold that you find in riverbed. And the soil in a riverbed is very rich because you have so much, you know, marine life and, plant life flowing over it, but then there's gold deposited there. And I was like, that's what we do, right? Like when we're working with medtech companies, there's so much rich content. There's so much intelligence and innovation baked into what they're doing. Our job, though, is to find the pieces of gold that will really help them tell that story and distill that, right? And like purify it. And it goes through a refining process to make sure the message is really clear. Let's leave the extra behind. And then once we get it to a good spot, we shine it and we just like make the best part of that messaging, pull that forward. So it just made a lot of sense for the agency to be called Alluvia Studio.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's such a great story too. I love the intentionality behind it and the thought process.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, so you have some full core values with the company, and I'm assuming this also derives from yourself. And three were the values of authenticity, joy, and humor. And I speak to those and how you came up with that.
Sure. Well, authenticity is, I just can't not be authentic. So one of the things you and I had talked about before is I have a hard time talking about myself. I just am naturally a little bit humble and I have to ask other people to tell me what I'm good at, right? And they're like, well, you're such a thought leader. You know this industry so well. You're so great at telling a story. And I think just being able to say, hey, I don't know how to frame myself is something that's just innate to me. I think I want to work that way with people. It means that if you need to have a tough conversation with a client, you can have it. Something doesn't feel right. I want to pick up the phone and say, hey, this didn't feel right to me. I don't like how this conversation went. I don't like how this project's going because I sense that you're dissatisfied. I want to talk about it. I want to understand it. From the client side, that's how this authenticity works. And then with my team as well. So for me, their personal lives are very important. I know we all bring our personal life into our work. If we say that we don't, we're lying. And so I ask that, if someone's having a rough day or going through something, as much as they're comfortable, at least just let us know so that other people aren't impacted by maybe, a down day or take it personally. Cause you know how we all do that, right? We read into the, oh, did I do something to upset them? No, I'm just here today. And so I think it's really important one, and I want people to feel comfortable with them to feel themselves. And I think it helps with like diverse perspectives as well. And then fun. So like humor, fun to me are lumped together. And I just think when you have fun at work, you do your best work. And I'm reminded of a couple of stories with our clients. So a lot of times we think in medtech, like everything's so serious, everything, and it's a serious business. We're doing important things. There's nothing flip about what we do. However, we're all human beings and we all need to have fun while we're working together. So we like our clients to have fun working with us. And I like sharing things that are fun about me. And I had someone just this week who's from a very high level financial position in a big company comment that he loved that I had a roller skater in my LinkedIn profile. Now, I never would have thought that, right? I never thought
Right.
that person would have really appreciated that. But that just goes to show that we all need to have fun. And
Yeah.
even if we're working hard, we just like work hard, play hard. Like, let's just, when we're stressed, let's just laugh it off and keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. And the joy aspect, just curious because that is the huge core value of mine. And so I would just love to hear your take on it.
It is my purpose in life. I have identified that. I got go through a leadership development class about 20 years ago with Kimberly Clark, and we identified our purpose, and bringing joy into other people's lives was mine. And what that means for me, it's funny. Like, early on in my career, I didn't think I was going to work in med tech. I thought I was working like hospitality, tourism, something, that's fun, obvious fun. But what I really realized is that joy comes from completing a project, feeling very good about what you do. We are often a very important part when people are presenting about themselves. So they do a lot of presentations. They're presenting to their boss or to a board. We want to make them look good. We want to make them feel very confident, and relieving that stress is a joyful experience for them. So for me, it's very personal. As much as we can, we want to help them feel that and experience that. And that comes down to how we communicate with them. Let's laugh a little bit. Our job is to look good. This business is not about Alluvia. This business is about you. And we are here to be a partner with you in that process.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. That resonates very much. Yeah. So, you've had an amazing career and you've worked, like you said, on the hospital side, you have had the device side and now your own business. Are there any moments along your journey that really stand out as affirming to you that, yes, I am in the right place at the right time?
Definitely. When I started my consulting business, I wasn't sure that I was going to be in MedTech. So I had been in the hospital world for about 10 years, and I had been in MedTech for about 10 years. And I thought, well, am I supposed to be doing something different? That's a nice time to and my relationships and my reputation drew me back in. So it was almost one of those, like, I'm meant to be here because I do have the experience that people value. I do have a way of thinking that's very helpful for people. And it's a unique perspective that help. And so through my consulting business, I ended up launching 2 more products through very large publicly traded companies. And I thought, well, okay, obviously I'm supposed to be doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Yes. And I think makes sense too, because it's also rather niche, so having the skill sets really play a good part into it. It's basically what I'm trying to get at is it's not necessarily an easy path. So it's helpful to have had that background to,
Sure.
You've got the communications and the marketing, but also the nitty gritty of, I remember when I first joined, somebody would say a sentence and it was like half of it was acronyms and it's just such a steep learning curve.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It is. It really, and it still is. I mean, there's no way to know about every specialty in the
Right.
world or all of the, technical or clinical issues that our clients, customers need to deal with. But being able to figure out which parts you need to understand and which you don't, I
Yeah.
think is good. Like, what do you need to filter?
Yeah.
How deep do you really need to go in order to help them communicate their message is helpful. And I think having that experience does provide that filter.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I was thinking about your podcast and I love what you're doing with it. Like, I love that you're trying to shine a light on our community, and it is about so many people trying to help people and save lives. And yes, I mean, I work so heavily with the investor community and startup community that sometimes it starts to feel a lot like it's about money. I think money follows great ideas, right? Because there's an economic value to an innovation that's going to save our healthcare system money, save lives and outcomes and things like that. So I think it's all important. One of the things that I've thought about though is our unique position is we help people that help people save lives. So, we're not on the front line innovating new devices. We're not really on the front line working with the patients. But if they don't tell their story, if there's not awareness of their solution, if it's not implemented correctly, I think a lot about that at the sales level, having been in those shoes. If those things aren't done correctly, then the patient's not going to be helped. And making sure that we make that as easy as possible. Most people don't really want to think about marketing, right? Like they want to think about the clinical aspect. They want to think about the innovation and the, technical issues that they need to solve and new product development. But the marketing piece is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just a fun, it's really a special role to play, I think. And I've always felt really grateful for that because, right, if somebody doesn't know that it exists, then they can't buy it.
Yeah.
And so even though my role is small in comparison to maybe the scientists and the engineers and everything like that, I still get to play a part. And I think that's just delightful. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And it's really helpful too. So, running an agency, I have a lot of creative people. Well, in our industry, we don't get to be quite as creative as other industries, right?
Yeah.
Because as you mentioned, we have regulatory reasons and it's a slightly more conservative industry for sure and should be.
Yeah.
We're always looking to figure out how do we inject that joy? How do we inject that fun and authenticity into something that still feels as professional, as innovative, and as buttoned up as the product is, as the quality process has been, as the clinical study has been, but still how do we have a unique voice within that? And so that's really helpful with my creative team too, to say, right, like our boundaries are a little bit different, but what we're doing is so much more important than selling a consumer product, maybe like a luxury item or jewelry or marketing I don't know, something sexier, like a vacation. I don't know.
Right.
To me, that'd be like the ultimate. Send me around the world and have me market and travel. That'd be
There
great.
you go.
But at the end of the day, like it's making a really big impact. And I
Yeah.
think that's really helpful to
Yes.
our people. And we're always looking for ways to try to get that experience. Like I'm always looking for ways to get experience for my team
Yeah.
to be able to do that. And I think that's probably my next big goal is like, how do I get them into the hospital? How do I expose them to what the day-to-day life is of a sales rep? I think that's really important in our industry to have some sort of exposure to feet on the street, in the hospital setting, how it works, what the sales rep has to go through to get the product implemented, how long it takes for it to actually succeed, right? Because it's not just one sale. It is a long process, a long journey, and an ongoing journey to make sure that it sticks and that people understand how to use it. And I think having that like empathy or at least point of view can be really helpful to anyone marketing in our industry.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that. That would be a really helpful thing for anyone, especially if they're newer to the industry, to have that sort of boots on the ground. This is what it's actually like kind of experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So pivoting the conversation just for fun.
Yeah.
Imagine that you were to be offered $1 million to teach a masterclass on anything you want. It could be within your industry, doesn't have to be. What would you choose to teach?
I think it would really be about this, like how to find joy, like how to find joy in everything. How do you cultivate a joyful outlook on life so that even when you're sitting in traffic or doing something you don't really love to do, how can you integrate? I think that one thing that's really important to me is my faith. So my values, I'm a Christian, and I really believe the only true joy that we have is when we have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And so that's not part of my business. That's part of my life mantra. But like, if I could help people get to the real joy, that would be like the ultimate goal, right? If I can't get them there, if I can get them to, experience joy in the day to day or experience joy in their trials, I think that would be something where I'd do it for free. I don't even need $1 million. $1 million would be great.
Yeah. Right.
Excellent.
Excellent. Yes. Okay. And then how do you wish to be remembered after you leave this world?
I think it's that point I just made there, right? Is that maybe, I mean, it's so cliched, but I left things better than I found them. I left people better than I found. And ultimately, if I lead them to Jesus, that is like the ultimate goal for me as a Christian. So for me, that would be a metric that if it was, one person, if it was 1 million people, it doesn't matter. That's the goal.
Yeah. 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 And then final question. What is one thing that makes you smile every time you see or think about it?
It's my business. It really is. I mean, okay, obviously my family and my pets and things like that. But I really love coming to the office. We have our own building. Every time I come here, my spirits are lifted. I love seeing my team members, and I love working with the clients and just hearing from them and building those relationships. Everything about this is so deeply personal to me that the money piece of it is like the very last thing that I think about. It's the last way that I run my business. It's the last way that I measure success. It's the last way I hire. It is really just follows that positive feeling of making an impact and having fun. I know it sounds crazy. We keep saying that, but I think it's really fun to do what I do.
Yeah. I love that answer. That's wonderful. And I think that's one of those affirmations that, yeah, you are in the right place at the right time.
Yes.
Because you're having fun and you're joyful. I
Yeah,
love
sometimes
that.
it's, tempting to work from home. And then I work from home and then I come to the office. I'm like, why did I even work from home? It's so much better here. And we have a disco ball here and I don't have a disco ball at home.
Brilliant. I love it. Oh my goodness. Well, this has been such a fantastic conversation, Rachel. I so appreciate you and your time today. And I love the way that you bring joy and fun into MedTech and into the lives of the people that you touch.
And we're excited to be making a donation on your behalf as a thank you for your time today to Sleep in Heavenly Peace, which provides beds for children who don't have any in the United States. So thank you for choosing that charity to support.
Again, thank you so much for everything you're doing to change lives for a better world.
Thank you. This is a great interview. So I appreciate it. You made it easy.
Oh, good. So glad to hear that. All right. Well, thank you so much again. And thank you also to our listeners for tuning in. And if you're feeling as inspired as I am right now, I'd love it if you'd share this episode with a colleague or two. And we'll catch you next time.
The Leading Difference is brought to you by Velentium Medical. Velentium Medical is a full-service CDMO serving MedTech clients worldwide to securely design, manufacture, and test Class 2 and Class 3 medical devices. Velentium Medical's 4 units include research and development, pairing electronic and mechanical design, embedded firmware, mobile app development, and cloud systems with the human factor studies and systems engineering necessary to streamline medical device regulatory approval. Contract manufacturing, building medical products at the prototype, clinical, and commercial levels in the U.S. as well as in low-cost regions in 1345 certified and FDA-registered Class 7 clean rooms. Cybersecurity, generating the 12 cybersecurity design artifacts required for FDA submission. And automated test systems, assuring that every device produced is exactly the same as the device that was approved. Visit ValentiumMedical.com to explore how we can work together to change lives for a better world.